Dear friends, welcome to our online afternoon debate, Green and Digital Transition, its challenges and prospects. European economy is going through big change. After a big asymmetric shock, which is of course the corona epidemic, we are seeing European economy again growing. There's a lot of liquidity in the market, investment is back, and the mood is good. But there's some nervousness. Of course, the big question is how the European economy will look like after corona epidemic in the long, but also in the short term. For the European Union, the answer is very clear. European Union and its Commission wants the European economy to be green, and it wants it to be digital. And today, that's our landscape of our panel discussion today. For debate today, we have three very interesting and important panelists. First of all, Andrej Vizjak, Minister of Environment and Spatial Planning from Slovenia. Minister Vizjak has a background in engineering, in IT industry, but last 2 decades he has held very relevant political positions in Slovenian politics during the first Janša government, Minister of Economy and Minister of Labor, Family and Social Affairs. And now the Minister of Environment and Spatial Planning. Why his presence is so relevant for us is, of course, that what we are having the last part of this year is Slovenian presidency of the EU Council, where the Slovenia is giving direction of the politics of the European Union, and the green and digital agenda will be very, very important part of it. Our second panelist is Madam Henna Virkkunen. He's a second-term member of the European Parliament, in very influential committees of industry, research and energy, as also Committee on Transport and Tourism. She's also a former Minister of Public Administration and Local Government, and we are very happy to have her because she has had very busy times in Finland and very recent municipal election where she did very well as her party. So congratulations, Madam Virkkunen, and welcome to our debate. And our third speaker is Manuel Kostman, who is the Senior Vice President and Chief Corporate Affairs Officer for Liberty Global. Liberty Global is a world leader in converged broadband video and mobile communication services. So high industry business and next generation products, 5G and all related technologies. Liberty Global is connecting 85 million subscribers across Europe and the United Kingdom. And Mr. Kostman is leading the regulatory strategy, public policy, government affairs, and corporate communications. So we have 1 hour for our debate, and we are going to use the time very, very well. And so first I would like to give the floor to Minister Vizjak. So, Minister, Slovenian presidency, green and digital transition, which is very important part of your agenda. So what are the accent points? What are the important areas? What will Slovenia want to achieve during its 6 months presidency? Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you for invitation. Thank you everybody for this opportunity. The Slovenian presidency will put strong emphasis on the discussion on various aspects of digitalization. We will support development that gives the EU greater digital economy and faster closing of the gap with digital world leaders. We will give priority to strengthening European cyber resilience and establishing a comprehensive cyber crisis response of member states and EU institutions. Our goal is to accelerate digital transformation in order to take advantage of the development opportunities of technology to improve the quality of life of our citizens. The aim of the Slovenian presidency is direct significant funds from the multi-annual financial framework, and in particular the recovery fund, into concrete programs and projects as soon as possible, which will help member states to restart their economy and recover their companies. The presidency aims to complete the procedures for approving national recovery and resilience plan as soon as possible. The Slovenian presidency will make very effort to ensure that the EU maintains its leading role in the field of a fair green transition at the global level. The goal of tackling climate change is clear and ambitious: to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 55% by 2030 compared to the base year 1990, thereby while maintaining or improving the competitiveness of European industry, reducing harmful emissions, as well as energy dependence and ensuring fair energy transition. In terms of biodiversity, which is also very important for recovery, we will focus on adopting an ambitious biodiversity framework after 2020 and on reducing biodiversity loss through ecosystem restoration measures and other measures under the EU biodiversity strategy to 2030. In the field of spatial planning, construction and buildings and real estate management, we will finish the project called E-Space, E-Prostor. The goal is to accelerate and improve the digitalization of the processes in order to achieve connectable, free, accessible, and reliable spatial data sets and services. Maybe this last one is a domestic project, but it is very important. We put this to our RRF, and this is a concrete project how we see the digitalization in line with these EU efforts. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you, Minister. I would go straight to the kind of, if you may, follow-up question. You very important points. I think it's very clearly demonstrates that if you look at the moment as we speak today, this digital and green transition debate, it's very much driven by this European Recovery and Resilience Facility. And what we are discussing in these days is, of course, these national plans. So one wonders, is there more to it? But Minister, what is your experience on these national plans? I'm sure that you have been forming and writing one of Slovenia, and also I'm sure a little bit following what the other countries are doing. And does it really give the appropriate resources to this transition? What are those national plans' role in this whole big picture of this transition? Minister.
This is very important. This is very important because each country has its own specifics, and so that is the reason why we prepare different proposals. And Slovenia has requested a total of 2.5 billion in support under the RRF. This is 1.8 billion in grants and 600 million in loans. And Slovenia plans is structured around 4 priority pillars. First of all, green transition, digital transformation. Second, smart, sustainable, and inclusive growth. And health and welfare, including investments and reforms in long-term care and social houses. So our plan envisages more than 43% for green and more than 20% for digital goals. It is very important because this is the threshold to have the Commission confirmed your plan. So maybe within digital transformation, so the public sector and public administration, we were prepared proposal for Green Slovenian Location Framework. The objective of the investments is to foster smart management of space as a sensitive and limited natural resources, and reduce construction pressures on new land and increasing the resilience to climate change. In addition, it is expected to provide real-time spatial data and services based on the combined use of real estate, environmental, water records, economic public infrastructure, and building land records. The investments shall ensure that the key spatial and environmental digital data are interconnected, and interoperable. This is expected to support the development and operationalization of digital services related to the environment, flood areas, land policy at local and national level, and public participation in spatial planning.
Yeah, thank you, Minister. It's true, and especially Slovenia has very ambitious national plan of a digitalization of the whole of your infrastructure. Very, very interesting to follow, actually. Yeah, it's very interesting to follow. Madam Virkkunen, let's stay in the big picture. So this whole Green Deal, which is the kind of the main element of the Commission's planning, before a pandemic. Now we have, but also let's be very honest. There is a challenging element for the industry and for the companies. And so my question is, has the situation now changed after corona epidemic? Should the priorities still be the same? I know we know your political group EPP agreed with some elements, with some elements not. So is the concept still very valid? Does it really deliver in your view, or should we have more focus on growth, or maybe they're not contradiction at all? Madam Virkkunen, floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Tommy. I think it's a good question, and in a way, I have been surprised anyway that how committed I think our industry and SMEs are to this Green Deal, because it could happen. Because we know that, for example, if we look the some very big parts of our economy, like tourism sector, transport sector, hotels, restaurants, SMEs, they have been really suffering during this last year and months. And it could have happened that they could be, very critical on Green Deal now and all the investments what are needed and all the changes which are needed. But in a way, I'm surprised at how committed I think our industry and economy and SMEs are to these targets of Green Deal. So I think everybody sees that we have to do these changes. And if we look our history also, I'm quite positive because we can see that, for example, 2020 targets, what we have reached them in Europe. So I think we can also reach those targets we have been setting now, even that, of course, they are very, very ambitious. But of course, now what is needed, it's more public funding to help SMEs and industry to do these investments. And we know that we have to invest in many, many different areas also. But I think it's good now because we know that we need investments to boost our economy anyway. And we have to also do these changes to reach the targets to be climate neutral. So I think it's good to combine those investments now. So I think in a way, it's even more important than earlier, this Green Deal. And maybe I think the part also what we will be discussing also is the digital part of this transition. And I think it has become also more and more important now during the pandemic, because the pandemic, it has been really boosting the digitalization in our economy during the last year. So I think now also we can use the opportunities of digitalization better way, also to reach targets in Green Deal. But of course, it's very challenging because of the economical situation. But anyway, now when we have decided, okay, we will boost our economy and industries and SMEs by putting big public money to investments. So I think it's really clever to put those investments now to green and clean technologies in Europe. So I think some new challenges, but anyway, I think in the way the changes we are now having, in the way they are pushing us to the right direction, I think.
Thank you, Madam Virkkunen. Mr. Kostman, Madam Virkkunen expressed her not a positive surprise that the companies and private sectors are really embracing these agendas. And so So, but how is it really? Do you, like your personal, just between us, do you think that, for example, telecoms companies are really doing enough to contribute to the sustainability clause for the European? What can they really do? Or is it just rhetoric you have to adapt, but then you do your business? How do you see that? What is your view?
Thank you, Tommy. And no, I absolutely think communication companies have a critical role to play here. And it's thank you for allowing me to join this discussion. And I will give you a few thoughts on how we think ICT in general and communication in particular can be used as an enabler for a sustainable economy on the long run. As for Liberty Global, as Tommy mentioned, our subscribers connect to over 85 million broadband, video, fixed and mobile services, and that includes 5G and gigabit networks. We have, and actually most telecom companies in Europe did so, firmly supported the ambitious goals set by the current Commission under President von der Leyen's presidency on making Europe the first climate neutral continent. And we too want to see that EU 2030 climate target to be 55% below the 1999 targets levels. And in our view, the digital and green transition really underpins these goals with digital technologies and gigabit connectivity as a massive enabler of that transition. We studied that link between the green and digital transitions in some detail in our 2019 report by the consulting firm Oxera on the social benefits of broadband. And in that study, Oxera showed the transformative effects of the rollout of gigabit connectivity. And one of the key areas of impact of high-speed connectivity on emissions is in reducing commuting. And we've all seen a massive experiment taking place in the whole world on that in the past year, of course. For a country like Belgium, greenhouse gases and emitted by commuting today amount to over 600, 700 kilos of CO2 per commuter per year. And this past year, the pandemic has demonstrated the power and reliability of hybrid fiber networks, how they became a critical asset in supporting the working economy as we all stayed home. And the environmental impact of that commuting has been significantly reduced during that period. And not just for workers, but also for schools and many others who otherwise were on the road all the time. The reduction in time spent commuting has had also a very positive effect on people's lives, providing with more time to pursue their own interests. And in this sense, I think it's a positive step that the EU Recovery Fund will be dedicated 37% to green investments and 20% to digital investments. From our perspective, the world really learned some very important lessons this year. The pandemic demonstrated that the EU still suffers from digital underinvestment and supply chain dependency, in particular from outside of the EU. And in particular, we also all suddenly realized how dependent our society has become on reliable networks, protecting their long-term resilience, scaling them up and keeping them safe from viruses and attacks that will all be very, very crucial. So the funds issued by governments across Europe should be used to bridge the investment gaps where there is no business case to roll out those networks and protect them. However, digital transition requires more than just public funding. What we also think is key is the market uptake of new technologies. And as an innovator at the forefront of the digital transition, we believe we have a responsibility in building trust and confidence among our customers. And finally, another key factor to ensure that citizens are empowered to make use of more digital tools and services, the Commission has rightly highlighted the need to ensure more digital skills among Europeans, targeting 80% of the population with basic digital skills by 2030. You need more than just hardware, you also need to help people using it. And at Liberty Global, we try our best also to empower people to develop their skills. Among others, and I'll close with that, we are supported a Future Makers Awards challenge for 7 to 17-year-olds to use their technological skills to make positive changes in their communities. We host awards and programs in Ireland, Hungary, and the Netherlands. And I was really honored recently to take part as a judge in a program of the coolest projects, which allows young people from over 40 countries to showcase their technological projects at that young age. And I look forward to announcing a winner on that later this month. But I do think, Tommy, that we have an important role to play here. Yes.
Mr. Kaufman, if you allow me a follow-up question, so then I think in your first round of interventions, you have underlined the role of the different actors on this whole game. It's not centralized operation. You have companies, you have also regions. So your kind of private company perspective, what because as Madam Virkkunen mentioned, the goodwill seems to be there in the private sector, but what could be what could the public side, the legislator, do better? You meant, of course, always there's a question of funding and the timing of the regulations. But what are the elements? What elements are there which you feel that if those would be put in table, this whole process and digital, well, especially digital transition, but also green, could go faster? What do you feel? Can you unmute yourself?
No, the first issue to solve is really the broad rollout of high-speed connectivity across society, right? And there's a number of countries where we are doing very well, and where we have actually contributed to 95, 98% penetration of super high services, but that's still more to do. And policymakers can help. They can help in providing the right conditions, and sometimes it's very simple conditions. Sometimes it's not the people in European Parliament, but it's the local lawmakers in municipalities who block the digging of the roads to bring high-speed networks to individual households. And so sometimes you have to go to that level of policy making to unblock certain blockades. But generally speaking, I think the European Commission and Parliament have already significantly helped in creating a positive investment climate. There's a whole range of positive directives and regulations that came out in the past couple of years. So anything that helps to promote the longevity and robust protection of those communication networks is going to be critical. And I should also say that from a green motivation from our side, we have a very strong business imperative to make that green transition, because saving energy by energy efficiency gains really brings real money in and real kind of profits to the business community, which can be used to reinvest back into the digital networks. So that remains an important drive on our side as well. And we know that there's lots of programs that we are engaged in with local governments to help us fulfill that energy drive. Now you're on mute.
Thank you very much. Mr. Visjak, I have a question for you, and I have to allow me to go back in time for some 15-20 minutes, because from your CV, as you have been minister in various responsibilities, but including economy. So back to this basic question, Green Deal and all of that. But now the big challenge is the growth, which relates to unemployment or tackling unemployment, having more employment. So what are for you, Minister, the big challenges of the Green Deal? You mentioned already earlier that, but do we need some adaptation? What is the adaptation? What we need that we can really be sure that we have enough growth and we are really back, the Europe is back in a global game where actually Asia and United States are speeding very, very fast as we are looking. Minister.
Yes, in the light of the recovery of the European economy following the COVID-19 pandemic, it is very important that we will continue our efforts for a green recovery. That will ensure the competitiveness of economy, new jobs in line with the European Green Deal. the digitalization is very important. So we will promote digitalization that needs to be integrated into all environmental and climate change policies. For example, through better data collection and processing, including space technology, for example. So experience with the COVID pandemic has shown the public service into areas of spatial planning, real estate management, and environmental protection are not yet sufficient developed to be done without physical contacts between provider and user. This was particularly evident in the consent that permitting processes are intervertious in spatial planning, which has a significant impact on economic activity and the ability to respond to economic and health crises. Problems are emerged because of the disconnections of data and processes, positional inaccuracies, and time inconsistent databases. I'm sure we can all agree that digitalization should transform our business models and consumption patterns, management of face, and other sectors. What is also important is that with digitalization, the citizens and other stakeholders become more actively involved, and thereby they enhance their trust in us, the policymakers. Difficulties that it comes to implementation is that I believe that the recovery plan is a major tool to achieve the objectives of the European Green Deal. Three major priorities have to be followed in this respect. First of all, the achievement of climate neutrality by 2050, strict implementation of principle do not harm, excluding all actions damaging the environment, and clean target in terms of expenditures of climate and environment. This requires sectoral coordination to jointly scale up green investments in the field of sustainable mobility, renewable energy, building renovations, and circular economy. Transition must be fair also, inclusive, and profitable for all the citizens. That this new path, the green transition, will be opportunity for all of us.
Thank you, Minister. You mentioned, you underlined the aspect of stakeholders. Madam Virkkunen, you had just a couple last 2, 3, or maybe more weeks, very intensive contact with normal people dealing with these daily issues. And I know entrepreneurs in your country, and this in many countries, entrepreneurs, SMEs are struggling, and they are struggling. And as we are speaking about employment, and we are looking what the unemployment figures are and how we can tackle, the reality is, and reality remains, that the most new jobs come from SMEs. So how do you see the connection of this green and digital transition and the tools what you are discussing in the European Parliament, and then the reality of the SMEs, the small entrepreneurs? Is the connection there? How can we better help them?
Yes, Tommy, I think the main topics might be very different in different countries. And if I'm thinking generally, the SMEs and industry, I think everybody is waiting for very much now that we can open the restrictions we have now in different services, and we can open the travel possibilities for people again, and we can go back to normal life. So that is, of course, most important thing for SMEs and industry, that the people, they can move again and they can live their life. And of course, it's very positive that the vaccination is now going very, very well in the European level. But in the same time, yes, we have to invest for the future of the industry and SMEs. And for example, you mentioned that I have been meeting a lot of people during the last weeks because we have had local election campaign. And in Finland, where I'm living, the most important topic for everybody is now about the forests in Finland. When we speak about the Green Deal and the future of Europe, so the Finnish people, they are very worried about the forest policy, because now we're speaking about Green Deal and climate and energy targets. And in Finland, the forest industry is the biggest industry, and about 10% of the Finns are forest owners themselves. So they are very worried about the plans that in the European level, there's so much plans that we should, protect so big area of the forest. Because in Finland, the forests are very important for the normal citizens, because nearly everybody is forest owner or someone of their family, and they are taking good care of their forests. And that was the main issue now when I was meeting people, even that we had local elections, everybody wanted to speak with me about forest policy and Fit for 55 package of the Commission, what we are expecting now in July, because it will have very big impact to Finnish economy and for the citizens' economy here also, if it's not going to right direction. So I think that's a good example that I think in all the member states, there's a little bit different topics which are now important for the citizens and for the SMEs and for the industry. But anyway, I think the general overview is very positive. But what we have to do as the decision makers, it was already mentioned here, all these public investments and the regulation. So I think it's very important that when we are making regulation, we should have very long time perspective there, because we have to give the legal certainty for the investments, that we are not, opening up the regulation all the time. So I think we have to really look now the 2050 targets, and because for the industry's perspective, 2050 is coming quite soon. So now when they are making the investments, they need to know that what we are expecting from them. And in the same time, we have to remember that one size doesn't fit all, because we have so different regions in Europe, and they have a little bit different challenges and possibilities. So we have to keep that also in mind. And subsidiarity principle, for example, like forest policy is one example of that we can't have the same policy all over, because all the member states, they have a little bit their own important topics. And I think it's important that in all the member states, the local decision makers and national decision makers, they are making the plan that how they are going to reach these targets and make the transition in their own country.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an important point, the question of regulation. On the other hand, especially in the digital world, we need timely regulation, but we need also good regulation. But let's stay in this stakeholder theme which Minister mentioned, and I would go to Mr. Konstman. Companies, as Madam Virkkunen mentioned, companies have been very forward-coming on this whole debate, and there's a European Green Digital Coalition, which is quite interesting. Where the companies are aligning and really push, the sustainability, agenda. So what's the dynamics? What's the idea there? Is there, is it, giving signal to society, or is it really? Are there issues which are not tackled, and together the companies try to give proposals? What's the thinking behind it, Mr. Konstman?
Yeah, thank you, Tommy. As a founding member of this European Green Digital Coalition, we first of all wanted to underline that we fully support the Commission's initiative to bring together different stakeholders, both public and private, to support a green digital transition. So it's first of all an instrument to bring public and private stakeholders together. And as a company, we've had a long tradition of participating in such public-private stakeholder formations. The public sector can draw expertise from the private sector, and vice versa. We learn what the immediate challenges and the immediate opportunities are that are driving the public agenda. The work is still in a very early stage. The first meeting is actually taking place this week, and we're still awaiting to get more details on what exactly is expected from us as a private sector stakeholder. But we're going into this with full positive intentions.
Thank you. Just to follow up, it's very interesting because the companies commit to create with the representatives, I'm just reading a quote, of other sectors, recommendations and guidelines for green and digital transformation of these sectors to benefit environment, society, and economy. So that makes me think how much the issue which Madam Virkkunen mentioned, the regulation, how much in the digital sector that it is challenging, that the industry is moving quite quick, but the regulation does not follow, or is it kind of, is the balance well coordinated? How do you feel? Because your
it's a very fair question, and it's one which is, of course, keeping us busy as well. The innovations in our sector are going very, very fast, and sometimes, a lot of companies in our space have difficulty catching up with the next wave of innovation. There's a lot of what we call disruption in the market, and so sometimes developments in the markets go a lot faster than legislators can actually follow, and so it requires a certain flexibility on the part of the regulator and legislator, and that's why actually we are pretty happy with the way the European Union framework is designed, which is largely principles based and largely based on general mechanisms of competition law, and so allowing for a scrutiny of how these sectors develop depending on analysis by the right regulators. And that's why typically that works better. Principles-based regulation works better than very specific sector specific regulation. But we see our role as providing expertise, and we have very active dialogue also with both competition authorities, telecommunications regulators, consumer regulators, and legislators in the capitals and in Brussels, where we try as much as possible and as soon as possible as we learn about new developments, new dynamics in the market, to share that with our friends in the public sector. We have a long tradition of creating public policy studies. We, as part of our mergers and acquisition agenda, we very frequently engage in very detailed market analysis and economic research, and we typically always share all of that information with our friends in the public sector. So it's all about sharing knowledge to bring everybody to as high a level of understanding of where these markets are going.
Thank you very much. Now I'm looking at my screen and I see a question from audience. Unfortunately, I don't see from who it exactly comes from, but I assume from young person, because the question is, what can you do in order to train more young generation towards green options / alternatives? But at the same time, what can you help in order to people get used and used with new technologies? So how to communicate, how to help new young generations towards green options, but at the same time how to help people in general towards new technologies. So who would like to take the floor? Maybe Madam Virkkunen.
Yes, thank you. I think it was very, very important question, because that is always what I want to underline now when we speak about digital transition or our competitiveness or about green transition, that we have to invest to education and research much more in the member states and in the European level. And of course, education is something that the member states, they are competent here. It's not under the competence of European Union, but of course, what we are doing in the European Union level, we are like learning from each other and trying to learn from the best practices. And also we can support, for example, with our Erasmus program, which we were doubling the exchange of students, because also the internationalization and the European cooperation, it's also improving the quality of education. And that's why I think Erasmus program is important tool here. And also in Erasmus program, we have these two main priorities, Green Deal and digitalization. They are also the priorities under the Erasmus. And also now with this recovery plan, when the Commission is now getting the recovery plans from different member states, one of the flagship projects also under the European Commission was that the member states should also make plans that how they are updating the skills of the workforce, and it should be part of the recovery plan. So I think that is something that we have to pay now very much attention, that how we can make sure that everybody will have good basic skills and good education, but it's more and more important also that the people, they have possibilities to update their skills. And especially I think when we speak about Green Deal and digitalization, these both sectors are something that have to be included to curricula in member states, and especially of course during the last year when we have had this big boost of digitalization, we have really seen how big differences there is between regions and member states, what kind of opportunities, for example, the teachers or students are having to study remotely, for example. Is there good connections, and is there enough tools and possibilities for that? And especially now I'm worried about it, that because now we see how the ICT sector is growing very, very fast, and digital economy, that we have so little part of girls and women studying these subjects and working in this field, in the field of digitalization and ICT. And that is something that we are trying to boost now in the European level, because of course it will have impacts to our labor markets if we don't have women on these fields, and it will have also impact also to the content what we are having in digital services if there's only men working in this very important area. But very important question.
One thing perhaps to add here,
Yes.
Tommy, if you allow me,
Yes,
we are very encouraged by the younger generation employees in our companies, for instance, both female and male. The very younger generations are very, very committed to the green transition, and they have set up their own initiatives. We facilitate that also in our company. We have these like employee support groups where younger employees in particular are given an opportunity to set and drive part of the agenda in this digital green transition. And it's a very strong motivator and a very positive force in our company, and I know in a lot of other companies as well. And if you excuse me, Tommy, I will have to unfortunately break away a little earlier. So I'm saying goodbye here.
All right, good. Yeah, still giving you the floor. Minister, would you start? What would be your comment on how to have, how to guide, or should you guide young people to more green options? But that's the question: how you European Union can do it, and then also, how to help people to get integrated or get used to with new technologies.
We must act very transparent, and all prepared proposals must be discussed among all generations, and impact assessment to economy, to our style of life and future must be done to prepare and adopt all measures which can focus our ambitions to Green Deal and all sustainable goals we have, and also to prepare answers for expectations of all generation. And I think that just transparent and inclusive work can put and can solve all ambitions we have.
Thank you. Mana Virkkunen, because actually you went already to that direction. This fair. What is important part of this debate is the whole fairness. So we have digital transition, green transition, a lot of resources, a lot of changes. But how when you went there, among the people, spoke with the people, some get to the train and some unfortunately do not, and many times it doesn't depend on them. So how will we get everybody on board? How will we can be sure that everybody get the benefits of this transition what we are discussing now?
Yes, Tommy, I think it's very important topic to take care now during this transition, because now we have to remember that if we want to have sustainable growth, we always have to have the three parts. It has to be, of course, it has to be environmentally sustainable, and that is something to where we are often now focusing very much. And especially if we speak about environment, often we are just looking at the climate part of that. But it has to be environmentally sustainable, but it has to be also economically and socially sustainable. So we have to always remember all these three parts, and they have to be in balance. So we can't just, if we are just looking the climate or environment, but it's unfair socially, just targeting to some people or some areas, it's not fair, it's not socially sustainable. Or if there is not, business case that it's not economical sustainable, then it's no go anyway in the future. So I think it's important to have the right balance between all these three pillars, because when we speak about sustainable growth, it's a social, economical, and environmental aspect, and we have to always remember all of these. And I can also often recognize now in the political discussion that people are very much now focusing just to environment and climate, but we shouldn't forget the economical and social part. And that is something we have to take care, I think, in all the levels. In the local level, because in the local level, we are making a lot of the decisions which are having those impacts to people's everyday life. And also in the national level and on the European level also, we have to look, especially, for example, now, during this year, during the next 3 years, Commission has, for example, promised that they will propose more than 80 different initiatives to make transport more clean and sustainable. And for example, when we speak about transport, we have very different areas in Europe, and the people are having very different situations, that what kind of options they are having, for example, in their everyday mobility. So we have to look, for example, when we make decisions on the transport sector, that they have to be fair also.
All right. Great, thank you very much. We have 11 minutes, 10 minutes left, so we keep time. There's one question again. I cannot see exactly from where it comes. What about the global dimension of green digital transition? For example, China in artificial intelligence. I think it's I think it's a good question. Who would like to go for it? Minister.
Maybe just a few words. During Slovenian presidency, we will have also this international conference COP26 in Glasgow, where we want to reach ambitious agreement in global level. This also includes this green and digital transformation for all the world. It is not enough to go just in Europe, which is who is a front leader here, but we need this globally. So how to involve other continents, other countries which have their specific problems and challenges? It is good challenge for our Slovenian presidency. Yes, the question is appropriate, because we must act globally. But if we are not the front leader of such activities, it is very hard to convince another continents and other countries to go on the same path. And this is our approach.
Thank you. So, Madam Virkunen, with the same question, we are now going to green and digital transition. I think digital transition is kind of self-evident, but green transition, of course, saving the planet is really the essence of it. But what if the others do not follow? Do we have a competitive advantage or disadvantage?
Yes, of course, Europe wanted to be a global leader in this fighting against climate change. And of course, I think it was very promising during the last months what have happened in the global scale, because we know that Japan and Korea and Canada, they all are committed also to 2050 targets. They want to be also carbon neutral. And China has also decided that they want to be carbon neutral 10 years later, 2060. And also now USA has came back to our global discussions, and they are in the same table with us again, discussing about climate targets. So I think this is very promising, because yes, it's true that we have to remember that European Union's emissions, they are just under 10% of the global emissions. So we can't solve this challenge ourselves. But I think it can be very good for our competitiveness if we are really front runners here and we have all these clean technologies, but we can then also import and or export outside from Europe. And of course, now when we are making trade agreements or when we are supporting with the development funding some areas, of course, these goals are also included to our agreements, that we want to have it, as a part of all our agreements, the green transition and also these climate targets. But I think it's very promising now what has happened also on the global stage. But of course, more commitments are needed from the biggest polluters. But I think anyway, good steps forward has been taken during the last months.
Thank you. We're almost at the end of our panel debate. Just to conclude the kind of the concluding question and an opportunity to panelists for close. For you, with all this discussion, green digital transition, what is the main challenge, the main core issue for you? Main challenge or main dimension? Maybe we start with Madam Virkkunen and then the minister.
Yes, thank you, Tommy, and thank you for the minister for this opportunity to join this panel. I think the most important challenge for us is, and also the key for the success in the future, is that we have to invest more to research and innovations, because I think the innovations, they are really the key for the better futures, and because of those new ideas and innovations, we can also reach these targets and we can be competitive in the future. So I think that is my main message, that more investments to research and innovations are needed to make sure that our industry will be competitive in the future and we can also tackle the global challenges we are facing.
Thank you, Madam Virkkunen. Very clear. Mr. Visjak.
The European Union is committed to the objective of achieving climate neutrality by 2050 and reducing greenhouse gas emissions by at last 55%. This also provides guidelines for the Slovenian presidency, which will strive for the transposition of the set objectives into binding European legislation. It is a very big challenge for us and for whole Europe, and we will do hard to reach these goals. It is not an easy task. It is very, very demanding task, and digital transformation is one of the EU objectives, and the pandemic has only further accelerated this process. Digital technologies have become essential for working, doing business, learning, socializing, and accessing everything from health services to culture. Progress needs to be made on digital services and markets for the EU to set new standards in the use of digital platforms. So digitalization is extremely interlinked with our climate targets and climate goals. It is somehow tool how to reach this climate neutrality and how to improve lifestyle in Europe in coming years. So I think that the connection of these two topics is very high and very linked. So we want to strive in all these two dimensions. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. I think Minister Vitiak's comment is a very good conclusion for this panel. Indeed, it's green digital transition. It's not operational led from Brussels or some Brussels toolbox related issue. It is issue which go beyond fund and investment. We are speaking about the transition of whole society, impacting on its every level. And important is also the different actors, the private sector. We could have spoken more about the role of the regions, but in 1 hour you can only speak about so much. And Madam Virkkunen mentioned very important aspect of as you know, on a whole this the research and innovation and resources for that. So with this, I would like to conclude. I would like to thank the panelists with very interesting insights. I would like to thank the online viewers for your loyalty and for your questions. And I would like to wish you a nice afternoon, at least here in Brussels time, and already welcome you to the next Martin Center online event. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.